Welcome back to Offsides, BUTV10's only professional sports talk show. I'm Allison DeWitt.
And I'm Mason Jablonski. Today we will hear from Seth Helman and Monet Ota as they discuss the early good and bad performances of the NHL season.
Then, Haley Alvarez-Lauto is joined by Ralph Bruni and Henry Dinh-Price to discuss their predictions for the World Cup knockout stages.
Finally, George Atencio will talk about the recent poor performance of some starting NFL quarterbacks.
All this and more, Offsides starts right now.
The NHL season is entering month 3 of 6 of regular season play, and on this segment of Hot or Not, we're here to talk which teams are on fire and which teams are running cold. I'm Monet Ota, joined by Seth Helman. Seth, the Florida Panthers made some big offseason moves. How do you think those are working out for them, and do you think the Panthers are hot or not?
Might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going not on the Florida Panthers. They traded for Claude Giroux at the trade deadline last year, and that move just really didn't work out for them. They had an early playoff exit. They end up not keeping him in the offseason. This team is very veteran-heavy. They end up trading for Matthew Tkachuk. They trade away Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, and that move has worked out well for them, but I feel like they're missing those two pieces of Huberdeau and Weegar. They signed Eric Staal, but it just feels like a team that'd be absolutely filthy like 8 years ago. You have Eric and Mark Staal, you have those two brothers, you have Radko Gudas, you have Patrick Hornquist and Sergei Bobrovsky, all of these guys that are, legends of today's game that were really, really excellent years back that just are out of their primes. Tkachuk's been absolutely unbelievable. He's just shy of 1.5 points per game. And then you have Brandon Montour and Gustav Forsling, who've been great defensemen for them. Just having a really good year. They're right in the beginning of their primes. But then after that, there's just not a lot of depth. Aaron Ekblad's missed a lot of games. He's been great in the games that he's played, but you can't rely on him to be on the ice day in and day out. Spencer Knight in net has been unbelievable, which is to be expected. He's sitting mid to low 2s in goals against average, but Bobrovsky as a backup has just been absolutely brutal. And $10 million really just hurts to be paying yearly for a backup guy. And they're really just waiting for that modified no-trade clause to kick in for him in a few years. And, this is a team that was at the top of the league last year, and now they're in real danger of missing the playoffs.
Those are all good points. While it pains me to say this, for my not team, I've got to go with my Washington Capitals before anyone else can rub it in my face. This team has been pretty dreadful through the first quarter of the season. For a group that won the Stanley Cup 4 years ago, that's been in the playoffs in 14 of their last 15 seasons, albeit with varying limited degrees of success, falling to 22nd in league standings with a 10-11-4 record is unacceptable. The front office made some moves during the offseason that cemented them as the second oldest team in the NHL, beat only by the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Caps didn't win the Cup without their Vranas and Burakovskis, and since losing those two, they haven't done much to fill in those young roles. Instead, they re-signed 32-year-old Marcus Johansson, who, let's remember, they acquired in exchange for a then 22-year-old Daniel Sprong and draft picks to supplement their already aging core. On top of that, only 4 of their usual 19 players in their lineup are under 30. So coupled with a coach that's shown he doesn't know how to develop young players with the AHL demotions of Connor McMichael and Hendrix Lapierre, there's no security in youth for the Capitals in the near future. Now, the Caps have had rubbish luck with injuries this year, with core offensive players like TJ Oshie, Nicholas Backstrom, Tom Wilson, all having been or are still out on long-term injured reserve. Connor Brown, who is a great offseason acquisition to fill in for Wilson while he's out, is also dealing with a long-term injury of his own. So clearly that plan didn't work out. And the Caps' key defensemen have been dealing with significant injuries that have taken them out of the lineup for extended periods of time as well. I get it. This team hasn't been with a full complement of players for a single game so far. But with that being said, at the end of the day, what matters are good results regardless of what's going on in the lineup. This team has simply not been doing enough. On the flip side now, there are some teams that have been doing particularly well in this league. So Seth, let's talk about the Bruins. Are you going hot or are you going not on them today?
Well, Monet, I am absolutely going hot on the Boston Bruins this year. Center depth was an issue last year. They bring back David Krejci, who had previously retired, but defensive depth was an issue as well. With forward Brad Marchand being out with a double hip surgery, defenseman Charlie McAvoy and Matt Grzelcyk both being out with surgeries to start the year, defense was going to be a question mark. Being able to build a roster with what they had was going to be a question mark. The only guy defensively that they brought in was Anton Stralman, just not the guy that Bruins fans were hoping to have them bring in. You've got a new coach in Coach Jim Montgomery, and he's been doing an excellent job with the roster that he has, unlike those Capitals. Brad Marchand, in his first 15 games back, there were only 2 games that he didn't score points in, having a great start to the season coming off that injury. He's looked outstanding in just about every game that he's played in. Nick Foligno is another player who's having a great year. It's only taken him 22 games to get 13 points, which is the exact point total he had last year in 64 games. Bit of a renaissance season for him. A lot of people were kind of heaping down the hate on Foligno. He's getting paid $3.8 million per year. People were saying he's too old, he's past his prime, and he might be past his prime, but he's certainly doing a good job of adding to this Bruins team this year. Connor Clifton is a defenseman who's had a pretty similar year in the sense that he's scoring a lot of points early compared to how many points he had last year. The thing that's really impressed me with Clifton is his offensive ability. Every single time he touches the puck in the offensive zone, it's like he's got it on a string. He's been dangling through defensemen, putting pressure on opposing goaltenders. There's not a lot more you can ask for from a young defenseman that's in that kind of bottom 3 of the defense. And speaking of defense, it starts with your goaltending. Linus Ullmark has been absolutely outstanding, standing on his head with Jeremy Swayman out for a lot of the beginning of the year with an injury. He's in the top of the league of wins and save percentage and goals against. And he's been a huge factor in their 14-0-0 start at home this season. That's an NHL record. They tied the 2013 Cup-winning Chicago Blackhawks for the least games to get to 20 wins. I mean, everything's pointing in the right direction for this Bruins team, and right now, they're my Cup favorite.
Incredibly bold and incredibly early take there, but I have to agree. I mean, the Bruins have been putting this league on notice. However, they've been consistently good for the past few years, right? I think the real surprise has been how well the New Jersey Devils have been playing. So for that reason, I'm going hot on them right now. They're sitting on top of their division. They're sitting on top of the league with a record of 19-4-1. They're firing on all cylinders. Jack Hughes is having a big year for New Jersey. He's leading his team, and he's tied for 12th in the league with 28 points. He's averaging over a point per game, and he just recently scored his first career hat trick against the Capitals. That one hurt, I'm not going to lie. But Hughes had his breakout season last year despite an injury that cut his season nearly in half, and he's really been cementing himself as a cornerstone on this young Devils team this season. Another young gun that stepped up has been goaltender Vitek Vanacek. With the current injury to Mackenzie Blackwood, Vanacek was given the starting role, and he has run with it. He ended November 3rd in the league in goals against per game and 7th in save percentage, and he was named the NHL's second star of the month for his efforts, and rightfully so. Despite losing Blackwood as well as top 6 winger Andre Palat early in November, the Devils still had a historic season. They tied a franchise record win streak at 13 games, and during that heater, the Devs outscored their opponents 56-24. Now, the only other Devils team in franchise history that achieved 13 straight wins went on to win the Stanley Cup. So, Seth, I said your Bruins take was a little early, but this is my early Cup favorite. They're the New Jersey Devils, and they're the ones to beat right now. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us. Now we're going to throw it to Haley, Raph, and Henry to talk World Cup predictions.
The World Cup group stage has been full of upsets and unpredictable performances so far. I'm Haley Alvarez-Lauto here with Henry Dinh-Price and Raf Bruni to talk about their predictions for the knockout stage. Henry and Raf, tell us about your bracket predictions, starting with who you have in the semifinals.
In the top left corner of the bracket, Argentina seems like a clear choice to make it to the semifinal round. Their loss to Saudi Arabia in the first game of the tournament was the most shocking upset we have seen this World Cup. But since then, they have bounced back with 2-0 wins against Mexico and Poland. They were especially dominant against Poland, who finished second in the group, maintaining 73% of possession and outnumbering the Poles in shots 23-4. Argentina is obviously headlined by Lionel Messi, the greatest player of all time in my opinion, but they have an excellent supporting cast surrounding him. as well, and they seem poised to make a deep run in this tournament. Plus, it's Messi's last World Cup. I don't want to bet against that.
I'm looking forward to the Netherlands-Argentina matchup. I thought that the Netherlands looked very sharp in a 3-1 victory against the US. Even though they only had 41% possession in that game, they took full advantage of their chances. The team is not filled with superstars, but Louis van Gaal's team plays well together as a unit. My prediction is that the Netherlands beats Argentina. As much as I want Messi to do well in this tournament, I'm still not completely sold on this Argentina team. I don't think Argentina is that fluid and well-rounded as a team. Argentina is overly reliant on Messi and him creating chances out of nothing. If a team somehow finds a way to contain Messi, I feel like Argentina will fall flat and can get easily beaten.
Well, my pick to meet Argentina in the semifinals are their biggest rivals, Brazil. The pre-tournament favorites should be set up nicely to make the semifinals, as they face South Korea and then Croatia. The #1 ranked team by FIFA are a group with many star players. One thing to keep an eye on, however, is that the ankle injury to Neymar suffered in the opening round against Serbia. Injury concerns also swirl around forward Gabriel Jesus, who has led Arsenal to the top spot in the English Premier League. After Brazil's final group game, he complained of pain in his knee. I'm worried that injuries could prevent Brazil from reaching their ultimate goal of winning their 6th World Cup. However, they should still have a strong enough team to reach the semis.
Yeah, Brazil looked like the best team in the World Cup throughout the group stage. Before the tournament, many people were skeptical of Richarlison being the starting lineup, especially since he had been rather lackluster recently for Tottenham Hotspur. But he has silenced his critics, especially with his 2-goal performance against Serbia, where he scored a stunning bicycle kick goal. But as you were saying, Henry, they do have quite a few injury problems that might derail their quest of winning the World Cup.
What about the other side of the bracket, Henry?
On the other side of the bracket, I have Spain to reach the semifinals, as they showed how brilliant they can be in their opening 7-0 win against Costa Rica. But they have since struggled, with a draw against Germany and a surprise loss against Japan. Despite this, I think they have the pieces to make a run. While they lack the clinical finishing needed to get a win in their last 2 games, they are always able to control the game in possession, playing at the speed they choose as they pass the ball around the pitch. My team to meet Spain in the semifinals are the defending champions, France. France looked exceptional in their first 2 games, beating Australia 4-1 and Denmark 2-1. This team is full of talent from the top down, and I see them defeating England in the quarterfinals.
I absolutely agree, Henry, and I predict the same matchup.
Nothing wrong with some bracket similarities. Now, who do you have winning those matchups?
In my semifinal matchups, I have Argentina defeating Brazil and France beating Spain. While I would pick a healthy Brazil over Argentina, they have been racking up injuries now, with 5 players possibly unable to suit up in their round of 16 matchup with South Korea. Argentina was also able to beat Brazil in the Copa America final last year, so I don't see why they can't replicate that performance. These are 2 great teams, but I can see Messi having an all-time performance in his final World Cup, breaking down Brazil's excellent backline and notching a win against their most bitter rival. Then I have France defeating Spain to meet Argentina in the final. Spain have just been a little too inconsistent for me to pick them over this excellent French team.
I have the Netherlands beating Brazil in my first matchup. The injuries to their team are too much to overcome, and I'm not sure Neymar can lead this team to a World Cup win. In the other matchup, I have France defeating Spain. Spain is a very strong team, but France's overwhelming talent and cohesion will be too much for them, and the reigning champs will have the chance to defend the title.
All solid choices for your bracket. At the end of the day, every tournament needs a winner. So who do you have as the champion of the 2022 World Cup?
My championship pick is Argentina. This may be somewhat of an unpopular pick after their loss to Saudi Arabia, but the way they have bounced back in response has impressed me. I think that France will miss the contributions of Conte and Benzema when facing a team of Argentina's caliber, and ultimately, Messi will be hungrier than he has ever been for that final victory. A final game on the biggest stage, there's no better way to end it than raising the trophy and winning Argentina's 3rd World Cup.
I also think that France loses in the final. I know the Netherlands winning the World Cup is a very bold prediction, but I am sold on this Netherlands team. They have a veteran coach in Louis van Gaal, a strong leader in Virgil van Dijk, and talented players like Memphis Depay and Frankie de Jong. Let's see what happens. Extremely excited for this World Cup knockout stage.
Well, your brackets are set. Let's see who emerges as victorious as the World Cup continues. Up next, we'll turn to George Atencio for his thoughts on underwhelming quarterbacks in the NFL so far.
Quarterback play in the NFL has always been a sliding scale, and this year has been no exception, with some particularly bad performances from QBs with high expectations. First, there's Zach Wilson and his affairs on and off the field. Wilson has completed just 55.6% of his passes, with 5 interceptions and just 4 touchdown passes. With the 25th worst QBR in the league, the Jets have lost all confidence in their 2021 second overall pick. Wilson was benched after going 9 for 22 against the Patriots with just 77 passing yards. During the post-game press conference, Wilson was asked if he had let the defense down. His response was no. Now the Jets will look to back up Mike White, who put up a big performance against the Bears, throwing for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. I find this move to be justified, as Wilson failed to recognize the fact that he let his defense down. A mixture of poor leadership and poor play is irredeemable. Next, we move on to another QB whose teammates are unhappy, Danger Russ Wilson, who has completed 60.1% of his passes with only 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 5 fumbles too. Wilson has dealt with a lat strain and a partially torn hamstring, and he's been down 5 running backs, 3 of his top 4 receivers, his starting tight end for 4 games, and 3 offensive tackles. So it's hard to put all the blame for the Broncos' woes on him, but he's lost the locker room early with his goofy offseason and training camp antics. Not to mention, only half of the Broncos went to his birthday party. Head coach Nathaniel Hackett has embraced Wilson's attitude toward the team with an offense that's dead last in the league, averaging 14.3 points a game. Despite these issues, Russ is in it for the long haul, signing a 5-year extension for $245 million with the Broncos in September. When Wilson gets healthy and the Broncos can build a solid core around him, you'll start to see some positive changes, but until then, he'll have to take the fall for Denver. Looking at another former Super Bowl champ, Aaron Rodgers is having one of the worst seasons of his career. His stat line doesn't look too bad, having completed 64.3% of his passes and throwing for 22 TDs, but he's thrown 9 picks and has fumbled 7 times. His QBR is the lowest it has been as a starter, and he hasn't thrown this many interceptions since 2010 or fumbled this many times since 2016. We still have 4 games yet to play, though. The Pack is pretty much out of playoff contention at 5-8, and they might bench Rodgers to experiment with Jordan Love. Yet, if he wants to salvage what's left of his career, he's going to have to relocate. I don't see him meshing with the Packers anymore, and he likely only has 1 year left. Finally, we're going to talk about the greatest football player of all time, Tom Brady, who's having a not-so-greatest of all-time season. Brady's stat line is subpar, with 66.2 completion percentage, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 3 fumbles. Repeatedly missing open receivers and not clicking with his offense, this is shaping up to be one of his worst seasons. And his QBR of 53.9 shows it. The Bucs are at an underwhelming 5-6 in one of the most dreadful divisions in football, and it looks like Brady is going to walk the plank with rumors of a return to the Patriots circulating. I think it would be a good fit for Brady to return to his roots, though it may not yield Super Bowl contention. He sacrificed his marriage to play more football, so he might as well, especially with the system that he's already used to, and a fan base that loves him. Allison and Mason, back to you.
Thank you, George. That's all we have for this episode of Offsides. If you're interested in joining our team, email us at offsides@butv10.com.
Also, be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Offsides10.
On behalf of our entire cast and crew, thanks for watching and have a great night.